For more on that, I'm joined on the line now by the Daily Maverick's associate editor, Brooks Spector. Brooks, as a U.S. expert, extending this invitation on Twitter, that's creative diplomacy by Donald Trump, from rocket man to border buddies with Kim Jong-un.
No, it's fascinating to watch this thing happen. It's only been a year or so ago before we were talking about fields of fire and fury and the dotard in the White House and various other forms of creative insults. And all along the way, of course, North Korea has been busily constructing nuclear devices and testing missiles up until very recently. Can I just drop back for a second and explain what in the world the demilitarized zone is to people?
Indeed.
Korea had been a Japanese colony up through the end of World War II, and at the conclusion of the war, the understanding was the United States would temporarily occupy the southern half of the country, and the Russians would come from the north and occupy again temporarily the northern half, and it was divided along the 38th parallel of latitude. This was to be a temporary division, and there wasn't any natural feature that it follows. In the event, North Korea in 1950 invaded what was now being called South Korea, and in a year and a half, 2 years of warfare, the balance pushed back to basically where the 38th parallel was, although it followed the natural landscape better. They had the armistice, the ceasefire, and then the agreement that followed that, although never a peace treaty. The UN had been the operating force militarily. It wasn't a U.S. intervention per se, although the U.S. provided the bulk of the military force. The demilitarized zone is about a 20-kilometer wide strip clear across the peninsula. The one curious thing about it now is because there's been no development in it, and there's no military in it, no people in it, basically, it's become a natural wildlife refuge. All kinds of things that have been pretty much hunted down in Korea live there now. Birds,
Brooks?
deer, and, who knows what else.
Brooks, what's the actual substance of this meeting, though? Strip away the fanfare for the moment, and what does it actually mean to have Donald Trump meet Kim Jong-un on the border of North Korea and South Korea?
Well, that's the conundrum, because there isn't any substance yet. There is an agreement, a handshake, to have further conversations, and then presumably the denuclearization and all that implies of North Korea would be party to the discussion, but there's no document that comes out of it. There's no joint accord. There's no statement. There was simply kiss, kiss, and hug, hug, and we will have more discussions later. And originally, of course, the Trump administration had said it was an absolutely fundamental, ironclad position that North Korea would have to denuclearize, that is, surrender its nuclear devices completely, fully, and totally, and subject to serious inspection. Now, none of that's come out of this, but there's been one heck of a fanfare of coverage in the media, coverage in all news television channels around the world, and they looked for all the world like the two of them were enjoying this effort to get some positive spin out of the thing. You have to wonder, there have been two meetings previous to that between the two men, one in Singapore and then one in Hanoi. Singapore produced a 2-page document that basically said, love is in the air. The second meeting in Hanoi produced nothing because Donald Trump left early. This third one was a positive feeling and a positive glow, but no actual agreement to do anything yet.
So Brooks, strip away that fanfare, and is this an astonishing leap towards denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and, by extension, perhaps world peace, a masterstroke by Donald Trump, or a U.S. president heading into an election year with his own problems at home in need of a distraction?
Well, it's a wonderful distraction now, isn't it, Nicholas? He's managed in one sweep to eliminate having to talk about the G20 summit, which had just taken place, to overshadow the two Democratic Party candidates' debates, and to manage to make people, at least for a while, think about it, Venezuela and Iran at the same time. That's quite a feat. And if they actually do begin to have negotiations to end North Korea's holding of nuclear weapons, that really would be monumental. But if you were a betting man, I wouldn't bet on that. There have been a number of agreements in the past, dating back to the mid-1980s, in which various versions of cooperation were supposed to happen, and ultimately they all fell apart. So this road has a lot of potholes in it yet.
Brooks Spector chatting to us about that groundbreaking meeting of Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un on the denuclearized Korean peninsula.